Welcome to a channel that's half memory and half evidence, where truth shows up in worn boots and bad timing. These stories aren't instructions, they are reconstructions, and sometimes there are guests. Nothing here is advice, and none of it's fake, other than this voice. From El Castillo de Blanquet, this is Steve R. Patterson.
Okay, everybody, welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to briefly just tell you the story of my transplant, a whole saga, real quick. Also, I'm going to kind of go along with something I've never done, is just really talk about the book that I wrote about this. So I've not ever read the entire book front to cover. I wrote it, I secluded myself in an ashram. If you don't know what that is, it's a meditation center, you could say, where there's usually a guru of sorts. And in my situation, it was in a city of Cali in Colombia. And the guy was also the guy that ran it was also a Mayan priest / shaman. It depended on who you asked. And so while there, I didn't really do much with them other than speak with him individually a little bit. But I just had myself in a laptop and no internet connection and typed out the book, basically episodically, and then stitched it together at the end. And I don't know if I ever really read it because, see, I've been on the road now for 5 years, and I wrote it on the road in the second year, I guess. And it was released when I was in Mexico City and on the day that I got engaged. So that's a story in itself. But so I've never actually, I only have one copy of it. But there's copies of it out there. And so the book is called This Is How It Feels to Heal, a shamanic journey through recovery, cancer, and other life challenges. And it's written so close to the event that I'm still processing it a lot more than I think I am now. And I'll probably say the same thing in 10 years. But so effectively on January 3rd, 2019, I was transplanted. The entire thing began for me, depending on how you want to count it, probably in the late 80s when I was doing intravenous drugs when I was in the Army trying to stay full speed. I was using, obviously, amphetamines to do this, and I was in an infantry unit, and so that was just part of the thing. And so anyway, that's possibly where I got hepatitis C, something I wouldn't find out about until 2017. Once again, by the military telling me this, the Veterans Administration. So at any rate, so that may be where that started, but for me to feel it wasn't until probably around 2007 and 8 when I started to get disjointed at times and confused. At the time, I was at that point about 10 years into my .com career. I've been working remotely now since 97, self-employed, so that's a little footnote, another conversation. And so I started just to get overwhelmed more and more, and plus I was disenfranchised. I didn't know really what was going on with me. And then one day in 2010, it was actually the day of, Valentine's Day, I collapsed, fell down a flight of steps on my daughter at the bottom. And I vaguely remember being escorted out the back of the house to the Jeep, and then that's it. And next thing I know, I'm waking up, and doctors are all around me and all this stuff, and it's the middle of the night. And basically, at that point, they told me that that I'd had massive liver damage and all this stuff, and I don't think they'd say anything then about any prognosis. But it was not short after that they did have a doctor came in and said that I was technically in what would be called stage 4 liver failure, and he said that I had between 6 months and 3 years to live. And so with that, as the book starts out, the first chapter, I literally looked at him and I said, "I don't buy your myth of death." And so the next morning I left the hospital, and that's really effectively the last time I went back to the medical people for 7 years, till 2017. In the interim, I went into the shamanic space and all this for alternate healings, and eventually was invited into recovery, became a counselor, blah, blah, blah. So that's what was happening on the surface level. Underneath it, for me personally, the first thing that hit, and this is particularly for people out there that are in this particular right now, I've been recently diagnosed. For me, early on, I was never in any kind of really pain, but the hepatic encephalopathy hit fast, and it didn't hit light. And hepatic encephalopathy, if you're unfamiliar with the term, it's when your brain is overloaded with toxins because your liver is unable to process them. And then, I might get this not exactly clinically right, but basically it turns it into ammonia, and when the ammonia enters your brain, literally your brain, it causes the synapses to fire incorrectly. So the way that I describe it basically is you picture like a city at night, all the lights are on, and you're just randomly taking things out. So, and it's not like, there's a little bit of physical to this itself, But most of this is cognitive, and it's like for instance, one time I saw my daughter put the popcorn in the microwave, and it was popped. And then her mother asked where it was, and I said it's in the mushroom, and then I said it's in the marshmallow, and then I finally said microwave, and it was like that. And it was hard. And then there was other times when it was much more intense. I would sit outside and talk to trees and bushes all day. All day. I did that almost for a year at one point, practically every day. I had a tree outside it was a fig tree. And of course I named it Newton. And I sat under Fig Newton all of 2013 mostly. When I talk about making the runes, when I carved the runes in the book, this was the time that was going on. My hair grew so much longer even than it is now. My beard grew out longer than it is now. I would run, you've seen pictures in the introduction of me. I started to slowly just turn into this other person. I started going to these shamanic practitioners and seeking help, and I reached out to people all over the world. And so I stayed in that space, and I was in that space talking to people and helping people, trying to say, you can live through this. Meanwhile, the HE was just horrible. And the way that I was managing it at the time is I had found out the only person we could really find anything on this was a study out of Australia, and in it they said it was about animal proteins, that made it worse. And so what I started doing, I'd already begun vegan. At that point I became vegan all the way, I think, and because I'd already gone vegetarianish already, with still meat in there, but you know how that goes. But at that point I became vegan, and so then but I needed protein. And so I couldn't have more than 20 grams of protein a day. If I went over 20, and I would never even get close, if I went over 20, I had a chance of just going off. It was like I just dropped some mescaline or something. I'm in la la land. It's not fun. It's not fun. It's confusion. It's this is where the physical part comes in, because this is when the mind and the body start to play on each other, because you are also in a very bad physical condition because of what's going on, or I was. And this draining feeling, like it's literally like it's going down. I can feel it when I talk about it. It's like your soul's going down your throat, and that was not the most painful part of the whole thing, but it was the longest. It went on for years. It went on from 2010 till 2007, well, 15, but not ultimately till transplant. But so anyway, hepatic encephalopathy was my big thing. I would miss whole days, whole weeks. I don't even remember a lot of it. But I had a gastro guy I was going to, and so what happened is he gave me I remember I was sitting in his office. He was checking my blood. It was the same thing every time, 6 months, 3 years. He was checking, and I heard him outside talking to somebody, and they're like, hey, football game this weekend and all that. I live in a college town. I was living in Athens, Georgia. Go Dogs. And he said, hey, I could tell he was talking to a drug rep, and he was trying to get people to take a drug. And so he walks in and he says, hey, there's this new experimental drug out there. Apparently it's for people that were having irritable bowel syndrome, but somehow it does work with HE. And it's called Xifaxan. At the time, that's what they called it. I think it's Rifaxan today. Would you like to be part of the clinical trials? And I said, yes. And then boom, like the first day I took it, I was back to probably around 85% cognitively there. I'd have little slips. I hadn't watched that protein and all that stuff. Protein was the number one thing. And no animal proteins, nothing, no dairy, none of that. If I would slip up and have some pizza or something, whew, I remember one time I did it, and it was like 3 days of just chaos in your head. And so you've heard my brother talk about it in the first episode. We'll talk more about HE if I can. That's still hard to talk about, as you can see. But so that happened, and it was about that time that I got invited into, Larry Walton, a friend of mine in Athens, Georgia, who runs Recovery Cafe, invited me in to speak to a recovery group about what it was like to be alive when the world so-called ended, because people in recovery sometimes say, hey man, the world's ending for me because I can't drink, I can't do this, whatever. And so, hey, why don't you come tell them what it's like when the doctor tells you that, and you say no, and now here you suddenly somehow are 4 or 5 years later at that point. And so I did, and then I stayed. I eventually, like 2 months later, decided, since I was somewhat cognitive back, I needed to do something again. My .com career was over in 2014. I'd sold UGA Sports to Yahoo Sports, And so I got some certifications and worked my way eventually up to counselor. But during this time, I was constantly having to fight the HE. There would be days, I remember driving around the Athens bypass, just holding the steering wheel as hard as I could to make sure that I didn't go off the road, but I wasn't moving. I mean, I was perfectly fine, but it was like I was pulling on it like it was a chain going in the ocean on the anchor or something. But there was no resistance. And then the other time I got in the car and I came to at another town at a stoplight. That all happened after Xifax. So you imagine what it was like back in the early days. So at any rate, during that time in 2017, a friend of mine in Athens, Georgia, Native American priest there, well-known guy, I won't mention his name. Maybe I will, Robert. Thank you, Robert. Robert Black Eagle, he said to me in 2017, he said, "Hey, Steve, aren't you a veteran?" And I said, "Yeah." He goes, "You ever think about going to the VA?" And I was like, "No, I haven't thought about the freaking Army since 1988 when I left on bad terms." And so I went to the VA, and they scooped me right up. And so next thing you know, I'm off to Augusta, Georgia. And in September 2017, they said, "Hey, you have hepatitis C. Why didn't you get tested for that?" I'm like, I don't know. I was in the hospital a couple times. And by the way, I did a couple times because of HE wind up in the hospital. Because of, at the time, what we later found out was peripheral neuropathy. I thought that HE was starting the cramps, but mostly it was a combination of the confusion and the cramping. But I'll get to hepatic encephalopathy next because that's still with me today. At any rate, September 2017, they say, "Hey, Steve, you have Hep C." And I said, "All right." And then in October 2017, they called and said, "Hey, Steve, you have 2 tumors in there." And then I was on the way down the highway with my daughter to see Dead and Company, the leftovers of the Grateful Dead, with my daughter and the phone rang, and we were on our way to light outside of the city, and they said, "Hey, Steve, we found it. It's cancer." And so I was like, "Oh, okay." And I didn't say anything about it. In my mind, I'm thinking, wow, this is the last time I'm ever going to go do maybe something like this. But I never let on to it. I didn't tell anybody for a few days, and I finally said something, told people a few days later that then I had cancer. But it was good news, and that's how I posted it on Facebook. I remember I posted, "Hey, everybody, I got some heavy news, but it's good. I have cancer." And that's because my MELD score, you heard my brother in the first video. If you haven't, go back and watch that. It's more about his story. We talk a little bit more about the X's and O's on this because I'm sort of interviewing him through it instead of telling my long-winded now. What am I going on forever? 12 minutes, not that bad, 13. At any rate, and along the way, of course, wife, family, and all that all ended in 2015. In 2017, I was on my own living in an apartment. So about from 17 on, I was on my own. And I've been, like that until, the current era. But at any rate, so back to the story, my MELD score was only like 17 or 18 because I had actually lowered it. It was like 19 when I started, but since I'd gone vegan and lived healthy for so many years and been out there meditating and going on shamanic journeys and refusing to die and embracing everything positive in the world, and there was no way in hell I was ever going to die. I never, ever thought I was going to die. I always insisted I was going to live. And I knew I was going to live, and I said, as soon as I live through this, I'm leaving the United States. We'll get to that later, too. But, boom, though, the cancer and all that increases it. So now I'm shipped off to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, to the Pittsburgh VA Medical Center, where I meet Dr. Cacciarelli, the greatest transplant surgeon in the United States. Thank you, Dr. Cacciarelli. And so here comes the tests, and man, there were some tough ones in there. But as far as the transplant people in this, by this time, it doesn't matter. There's nothing that hurts anymore. Pain was something that was gone long ago. When you go every freaking day every Tuesday giving 12 vials of blood for 2 years, they have to move up and down your arms because of the collapsed veins. It's like, hey man, I was never that kind of junkie, but I guess I am now. Look at me. Sorry for anybody out there that's struggling with that. I did too. It's a stigmatizing word, but anyway, you get what I'm saying, and just keep it real. That's what it looked like. All right. And so, any rate, so they asked me, do I want to go through some tests? They said, hey, we have this thing called TACE. Would you like to do it? And what they were planning on doing is going in through my leg, up into the liver, and to take a little whatever, and stick the little tumors and zap them with, I guess, chemo, and then bring it out and go right back in and cauterize around them like make a little cocoon. And the deal was, if you go 6 months without them getting bigger, or you get another one, we're going to jack your MELD score up to 31, meaning, boom, you get one right away. So I said, sign me up. And they said, well, tell you what, we have another experiment. Since you have hepatitis C, and we can't clear the hepatitis C up when you have this condition because it's so bad right now for your liver might freak out and that might be the end of you. Would you be willing to take a hepatic donor? So take a and then after you get the transplant, get rid of the hep C. I said, let's go. And so that cut it even more. So anyway, by the end of the whole thing, so 3 clinical trials I was a part of for rifaximin, for TACE, and then for, I don't know if TACE was technically still a clinical trial, but I think it was still experimental to some degree. I think it's much more now. And then also the hepatic to hepatic, HC to HC transfer, that I think was still fairly new. And so at any rate, all those things happened. 6 months went by. And so what happened is in November of 2019, or October-ish of 2019, I made it to the 6 months. There was no new tumors. They didn't grow. And I was put on the transplant list, had one false start, and man, was that hard. That was hard. When I went, they flew me on a Lear jet from Winder, Georgia to Pittsburgh. Only to get there, and the doctor says, this liver isn't good enough for you, Steve. You're in too good of shape, and you're too young. So I went home, and that was rough. They put me on a regular airplane back home, obviously. But then came Christmas, and in my head, I was telling myself, this is my last Christmas. This is it. This is never going to freaking happen. I don't know. Maybe I started to doubt it at this point because it was beyond my control. I'd given up control to doctors at this point, so it was... I'd done too much with them. They had altered my body too much, and I didn't know what was happening at this point. But then on January 2nd, here came that phone call. Steve, we have a liver for you. Do you still want it? Karen from the VA. Yes. So the same thing happens. This one was a big adventure. Horrible rainstorm in Athens knocked out all the power. The vehicle they were sending to pick me up to take me to the airport couldn't get there. I had to call an Uber. The roads were blocked. I'm on the radio with the local sheriff's department of the next county over, telling them that Ben Epps Airfield has been closed. The one in Athens. They're going to fly a freaking litter jet into that airport there to get me. We need somebody to go to the airport and open it because it was closed. So here I am with the Uber driver. I don't know if he's believing any of this as I'm driving down the road talking to the sheriff's department, talking to the VA. We get there. It's raining out. Sheriff car, when we get there, let me out. He gets out. He almost salutes me because he knows I'm a veteran or whatever. I'm wearing my VA hat and all that stuff. I'm surprised I don't have one on now. And so he walks me out onto the tarmac. Literally turn the lights on. The airport lights come on. There's not even anybody landing yet. I don't think there's anybody even in the tower. And so here comes in the middle of the night, it lands, it's pouring rain, they get out, the pilot and the other guy walk over to us, the cop's standing there, sheriff, and he goes, are you Steve Patterson? And I said, yes, and he goes, well, we got a problem. And I was like, oh my God, what? And he goes, well, I have to pee, and if I pee off the runway, that cop right there is going to give me a ticket. This really freaking happening right here. And so... anyway, you know what ends up happening. He relieves himself. We get on the plane, boom, go to Pittsburgh, get to the hospital, and it's closed, basically, so I'm wandering the hallways. This is almost comical. So I get up to the thing, and I get up to the transplant desk, and I was like, yes, may I help you? I'm here for my transplant. Oh, okay. Oh, you're Steve? It's like, yeah, I'm Steve. So it's funny because, they had the fancy car drive me to the VA and let me off, and it's like, all right, well, here I am. Luckily, I could walk. Luckily, I wasn't on HE wandering around downtown Pittsburgh looking for my liver. But anyway, the next day I woke up. I'm not going to talk about that after that. That's not a fun story. We'll save that one for later because I would just want for anybody that watched it up until now that is pre-transplant, just stop it now. And then maybe after your transplant, watch the second one. Obviously I'm here, right? I've not had any problem. Okay, I'm on the base lowest medications of everything that's there. I take care of myself. I only see the doctor once a year now. And that's not even just to give blood. Okay, that's not my advice to you to do that. It's absolutely not my advice. I don't even live where there's transplant people capable of taking care of me. I live in South America now. Not saying that they don't have them here, but the medical system here is different. You never see the same doctor twice. It's a completely different ball of wax. I don't even engage with that. Plus, I know how to take care of myself. And so just take care of yourself. You know, there was some horror stories in there. You're going to have your own. That's just part of it, man. It's a hard road, but some of the greatest wisdom is won or learned or realized or whatever you want to say, however you want to get it. It's funny how it sticks to you. You don't even have to try to get it. It's just you're going to go through some places that you don't want to go, but you're going to come out on the other end and you're going to be just fine, right? Keep that attitude up. And if you like this kind of content, obviously not pro level here. I'm not trying to be. I did that for a long time. You know, we'll talk other videos on here. You can hear about my professional sports career. All right, or my music career, any number of those. And so, not that there's a music career, but my live playing days. But if you like this, feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. Please do that. If you do like and comment, subscribe, come back. Watch the videos. It really helps the algorithm. Just stopping by for a minute actually goes against it. So let it play in the background. Not asking you to cheat, but it might be better to listen to me babble in the background. You have to look at me anyway. So at any rate, thanks a lot. And we'll see you next time. Comment below. Reach out on XSRP Valkyrie. And so keep in touch, man.